Welcome, everybody, to the TPI podcast, the Total Podcast Idiot Show, where we cover anything and everything related to Hardwood, the best college basketball online simulator you can possibly find. My name is Robert. I'm one of your co-hosts. There's my co-host Andrew over there. Andrew, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Happy New Year, Rob. It's good to see you again.
Happy New Year to the entire Hardwood universe.
Yeah, definitely to the whole community. Again, thank you to the community for all the support and feedback on our videos so far. It's been a fun project to do, definitely.
Yeah, we're really excited to hear all you guys' comments, all the views we're getting on YouTube, the discussion in Discord. It's been a
Yeah.
really good response, I think.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it already, we dropped a midweek episode actually talking about picking a team, building a team, and then evaluating players. Again, those are kind of like tutorials for beginners, but they're also valuable lessons to learn from an experience for an experienced player. And we got lots of good discussion of that episode, both on the Discord and yeah, there was a lot of discussion on the height growth theory and the all-around player theory that we brought up. And that last one's, still a mystery, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I mean, we're doing a podcast, sure, but we're nowhere near close to expert level on any of this. So some of the things that we bring up, if you guys have, opinions that you think you have evidence for, definitely bring it up and give us a rebuttal because we want to learn just as much as you guys do.
Yeah, and a number of you guys are really good at recording that data and keeping track of it all. So, all of that is valuable definitely for us to look at and consider. Yeah, so don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on the videos. Watch as much as you want and can, and share the video on the channel if you feel like it's valuable and you maybe want to get a friend involved. You want to introduce them to Hardwood. We feel like these are very, very good videos for a new person to watch, and or in the whole community. Like we said, anyone, no matter the experience level, can learn a lot from watching these videos, we feel. And so yeah, just share it around. We're not in it for the clout really, but that's nice too.
It's a fun project, and if people like it, that's even better, basically.
Yeah. So again, we are trying to do weekend videos. That's this one right now. And that's going to be more for like what's going on in the universe of Hardwood, recruiting and all the divisions and the best teams or the hot teams. And then those weekday videos are going to be more tutorials, guest appearances, interviews. And yeah, again, if you want to introduce a friend to the game, those are probably the ones to really watch more so, I'd say. And, everyone can learn from them. So
Yeah.
yeah. Rob, what's been going on so far in now the second week of this 2017 season?
Oh man, so much. Now that we are entering conference play, I think we're going to get a clearer idea of some of these teams that appear like they're really good. Non-con did a good job of of showing us some teams that might be strong early, some teams that might be weak. But with as the season goes on, it's a little bit more. You'll get a better idea of how good that team really is, especially as that strength of schedule and the RPI really starts to update with a larger sample size of games for opponents and stuff like that. The non-con, I know that I've gotten some relatively easy non-cons for my teams, and so I feel like maybe they're a little bit inflated going into the conference season, which that's something that you can't really handle or you can't really control if you have your team on scheduling, the scheduling mode like random or whatever it is. But now we can really start to look at RPI. In our previous episode, we were looking at TPI, sort of seeing the overall skill level of players. Now we can look at RPI and sort of see, okay, well, that team has a really tough schedule. They've played it really tough. They played it really well. They've beaten some teams, stuff like that. And that'll give us a better idea of what these teams are looking like as we go into the season.
Exactly. Yeah. RPI, I think when we were evaluating these teams, I think RPI actually it does a pretty good job. I know it's kind of fluky at times, but when I was looking at strength of schedules and opponent winning percentage and margin of victory, RPI just is a nice number to round it all up. and make it a rank teams by that, just one number. So yeah, that's what I more looked at when evaluating these teams. And so, just like last week, we're going to start with D1. And in D1, there are over 20 undefeated teams after non-con. Um, and I can
Crazy.
check that to see if it's updated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it's changed since the first game of conference schedule. I know that was exciting watching me count. Um, Now it's only 11 undefeated teams after just 11 games. So, that number got cut down real quick. I imagine a lot of that came from division or LL1, because I imagine a bunch of them were undefeated and had to lose at some point because now they're all going to fight each other.
One of the things that I've noticed is that like after non-con, some of these really high conferences, of course LL1, um, going after non-con going into the conference season, every team's like 8-2 or higher. Like you have 7-3, 8-2, a bunch of teams 9-1, a bunch of teams 10-0. And so like we were talking about, especially with those top teams after non-con, you can't really get like a clear picture of which one is going to differentiate from the rest of the pack. And so like, yeah, we had over half of the undefeated teams go down in just week one of conference play, or game one of conference play, I should say, cutting it down to 11 teams. And conference play is where, 30 games is a real slate. So that's where the teams prove themselves.
Yeah. And so, the real question is who's for real? Right?
Who's for real and who's a fluke? That's the question everybody's asking themselves right now.
Right, yeah. So it's still going to take a bit more time to sort out. Like you said, schedules are still mostly or RPI is still mostly considering D2 and D3 opponents, even strong teams, and these D1 teams still beat them up. A lot of teams still look really strong with RPIs over 600, so it's tough to sort that out. I think I count at least 50 teams with RPIs over 600.
Yeah.
59 teams currently through 11 games with RPIs over 600.
That's insane.
That's insane. So remember, only 64 teams were making the tournament. So
That's crazy. Yeah.
yeah.
So do you want to like highlight some of the major teams from D1? Sort of scroll through some of the bigger teams, what they look like, how their season has started?
So yeah, Knox, this is Bergkamp, he's the president, and they're a D3 team. They're probably the class of D3.
You mean
LL3.
Yeah, LL3. I was like, huh?
LL3.
Yeah, so they're really good. Obviously, and Bergkamp is one of the most active players in active people in the Discord, I should say. Has all kinds of really good advice for people.
Right, yeah. Bergkamp he's very active, and his team Knox looks legit right now. They are led by Wesley Lutz, their center. He's 7-footer, and he's huge. Wow. Whew, I didn't even realize he was that big. 275 pounds with a 7'7" wingspan.
Wow. 7'7" wingspan. That's nuts.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I went up against a guy with a 7'10" wingspan a couple days ago.
So an interesting aspect of that, though, is Lutz so far is giving up 44.6% in terms of opponent field goal percentage.
Well, that's pretty good still in the paint, Think about in the NBA, if you're in the under 45, if you're under 48%, that's still pretty good.
Sure. Yeah. He has a plus minus a plus 17.4. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a pretty high plus minus, obviously.
Wow. Yeah. Well, he was unfortunately injured in his last game, and so Knox took an L, though.
Yep, it happens. You lose your best player, obviously. Especially in conference play, it's going to be really tough to overcome that. I haven't looked at Wichita State too much, but I imagine they're pretty good. Yeah. So another note on Knox, if you look at their minute distribution, actually, it looks like they rotate pretty deep. So Lutz, for example, the center we were just highlighting, He's at 26.3 minutes a game. A couple of the starters are at 24, 28. And then they got some bench guys at 16, 15, 18. But overall, it looks like they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that are playing double-digit minutes. And that might be a reflection of non-con and trying to get guys minutes, against inferior opponents or something like that. But I mean, it just goes to show you that's a really, really deep team.
Yeah, definitely. That said, they have some weaknesses, right? I think particularly perimeter defense isn't looking super hot for them. I know a bunch of their guys, have ratings of 13, 14, 15 on
Yeah.
the perimeter, but for some reason it just hasn't clicked really when you look at the stats, when you look at the percentages that they're allowing. You know, they're allowing 43% shooting, which again, when you've gone undefeated, when you've beat up on a lot of teams, 43% is a little high actually. I mean, it's solid, no doubt. This is nitpicking for the number one team in RPI, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, keep that in mind. But you know, they could have a little bit better perimeter defense, I'd say.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
like you said, McCullough, I believe their starting point guard, his perimeter defense is 13. He's giving up 50% from the field.
right, right.
So that's,
Yeah.
16 for 37 from three. So that you don't want to see that.
Yeah, and I'd also say they need to figure out small forward a little bit more. They've been rotating or alternating between Doug Harris, a 6'7" power forward by trade, and true freshman Toby Heaton, their 5-star, also 6'7". So they tried to give Heaton the role right away, and it seemed like it didn't work out so much. And now they've gone to Harris, who he's much better in just pure skill right now. Um, he is a couple years older than Heaton, of course.
Yeah. And I bet the games that Heaton played more minutes was probably just Knox trying to get their talented freshmen, you know, some starts here and there, some minutes to play. He played like 26, 26, 25, but for the most part, I think he'll probably end up being the backup on that situation.
Right. Yeah. So it seems like they've already kind of figured it out. But yeah, that was just what I had noticed before.
Yeah, definitely one of the stronger teams in their division or in their conference, I should say. I wouldn't be surprised if they're competing for promotion come into the season.
Right. No doubt. No doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on, we've got the number 2 team in RPI. And trust me, it won't just all be a preview of the top, teams completely, but right now that's what we're going to focus on. It won't be completely in order though. But number 2, Rochester Yellow Jackets. We talked about them a little last week. Um, I didn't realize, yeah, what their team composition was. I mean, I knew they were good, but you know, it's really all about that backcourt. Bolin is an absolutely deadly shooter. He's hitting, I believe, 4 threes a game.
He's hitting 4.6.
4.5.
Yeah, 4.6 threes per game on 10.5 attempts. So he's shooting over 10 3-pointers a game, and he's making 44.3% of them. That's insane.
Which is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I mean that's like Steph Curry numbers.
That's what happens when you're an 18-18 and outside shooting and range combined.
Yeah, he's at 29.3 points per game on the season. So,
wow. But not to be completely overshadowed, Fabian Alcantar is a pretty solid point guard next to him, and he's doing a lot of work there too. With his 18 speed.
I would say he's the lockdown defender. He's sitting at 33.3 opponent field goal percentage on the season. So that's
interesting.
Yeah,
because he's only 12 in perimeter defense.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if he went up against some weak point guards in non-con or what, but he might. Obviously, perimeter defense rating by itself is not. We talked about it a little bit last week. It's not going to dictate how well your guy does in a matchup. Size, speed, and other intangibles might be there, but so far so good.
Right. Yeah, and for Rochester, the Yellow Jackets, it's all about the backcourt. Those two guys and their backups even.
Yeah.
all four of those players, Bolin, Alcantar, um, Bull, and shoot, who's their backup shooting guard?
Bull. Or are you talking about
Oh, who's their
their backup point guard
backup
is
point guard?
Ba.
Ba,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, the African Mamadou Ba.
Right, right. All
Yeah.
of them have usage rates over 25%, which means a quarter of the time they are finishing a possession, whether it's by a basket or a shot or an assist or a foul or turnover.
Yeah, so that's obviously really high usage.
Yeah.
And I mean, I imagine that will pick up. So their starting center, the 7'1" guy, Muznieks, I probably butchered that. He's out 19
Click
days.
his name, click his profile. He's got a great nickname.
He's out 19 days. Wait,
Yeah, that's a big injury.
Marcus, good luck saying my name, Muznieks. I'm sure I butchered that, but that's perfect. Rochester,
Yeah.
you get points on that one. That's a great nickname.
Yeah, it seems like the president's stingy. He knows his roster really well. I mean, just from that nickname, he knows where the production is gonna come from, and it's with those guards.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
really nice when you have a backup center, Don Roby, who's a 158 SI as a junior. Um,
yeah.
Nobody's gonna complain about that.
Right.
Six
And
nine,
6'9", he's
15
big.
board. Yeah. Wow.
Right, right.
The rich stay rich.
But their whole entire front court, no one backup starters has a usage rate of 20, and so again, it's that production. It's got to come from the backcourt, I guess,
Yep.
unless something changes, possibly.
Yeah. I guess we'll find out. He'll probably experiment a little bit going into conference season.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that makes them more predictable, though, and that's not good. Not always good. I
Not
mean,
always good. Yeah. I mean, you could be a little bit predictable if your guys are just better than the other guys.
right, yeah, there's something to be said about just sticking to your game plan and making the other team adjust their game plan to you.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, I'd rather have my style is to be hard to predict and be versatile and have depth, so that's just my philosophy, and it's just doesn't match up.
You're also over the top. So
Of course, of
just to
course.
throw that out there.
All right, yeah. So moving on to the next team we're going to look at, it's Stony Brook, the Stony Brook Seawolves. And yeah, they're number 3, so we've gone 1, 2, and 3. Don't worry, the next team we look at will not be number 4.
Fantastic name though, Stony Brook Sea Wolves.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
up there.
So
That's up there.
President Baez,
Bias. Yeah.
um, they've got a really good team, super skilled with Kenneth Kiefer and Paul Robertson in the backcourt. I remember DCM talking about Baez talking about them in the Discord a lot. He's in love with these two guys.
Yeah. I mean, Kiefer is 3 straight years of all conference as a freshman
Oh wow!
junior. So
I believe he's making a run at becoming Stony Brook's all-time leading scorer this season too.
that's pretty exciting. I think I'd be in
Wouldn't be
love with
surprised.
I think I would also be in love with a player who was all conference 3 years in a row.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So they're super skilled, but they're kind of small, right? Their starting center is Xavier Brandt. He's 6'8", which isn't small per se, especially being 240 pounds, which is solid. He's 16 strength, but when you pair 6'8" with an 11 rebounding and a 10 interior defense, it just isn't quite as strong as I would expect from, one of those teams in
I mean,
LL1 or LL2.
a team that's ranked, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
From a team that's ranked. Yeah, granted, Stony Brook is in LL4, so, yeah, they don't necessarily need to have that good of a big man.
They also
But
seem
it's
like they're
nice.
playing with some pace. They
Mhm.
pressure in their last game, the first conference game, they pressured 22% of the time. They played like 38% zone,
Oh,
um,
wow.
8% transition, which obviously isn't like, super fast or anything, but they might be trying to make up with their lack of size a little bit there by mixing up their coverages, and you can sort of get away. We talked about it. You can sort of get away with having undersized front court if you play a bit of zone. But yeah, I think you know We'll see. We'll see. You can usually get away with that kind of size as long as they have the relevant, relevant rebounding and interior defense skills and whatnot.
Right.
But obviously, they beat their first conference opponent, Southwest Minnesota State, 111-70. So,
Ooh,
yeah,
drubbing there.
nice little 41-point win for them to open the conference season, huh?
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, well, that's why they're ranked, in the top 25 in all the Hardwood universe, right?
And that's a team that has a 6'10.5" center and a 6'7.5" power forward. So,
Wow.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Stony Brook's power forward is only 6'6", with a ID of 10 and a rebound rating of 8. So again, and these aren't heavy guys either. They're not super big. They're not super strong. I mean, Brant is pretty strong. So it's, if they come up against in the wrong matchup, and I'm talking about in the national tournament, really,
Right. Yeah.
given how well they've played, may not work out as well as hoped.
Yep. Yep. Definitely possible.
All right. So now we're going to move on. And like I said, we're not going to just move on to number 4. We're going to move on to number 5, Mississippi Rebels.
So
The Ole Miss.
obviously, we don't only want to cover the top teams, but when you're talking about D1, it's all top teams. It's all really good teams.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So it's hard to avoid right now. Don't worry. We'll get on. The next few teams are a bit lower. So
Yeah.
don't worry. But yeah, Mississippi, the Rebels, they look freaking huge. They start Ed Cunningham, 6'11" center, and then they have a 6'9" power forward in Brooks Laterza, and then a 6'9" small forward in Dana Lemon. And let me tell you, Dana Lemon looks really good.
I mean, a 174 SI that's 6'9", right, with a 30-inch vertical, a 13 rating in speed, a 16 rating in strength. Like, only has 12 perimeter defense, but I mean, if you're going to find a guy that has the intangibles to be lockdown defender at his position, starting someone who's 6'9", but has the relevant speed for a small forward, that's just nuts. That's insane.
Right, yeah, that's insane. And then he can shoot, especially from 3.
Yeah, he's hitting 45% on the season from 3 on 5.6 attempts. So it's not like, he's still shooting. He's shooting in volume. 5.6 attempts from 3 a game is volume, but he's hitting really, really well. And he's holding opponents to 31% from the field. So 14 for 53 from 3. That's probably where that length comes into play.
Yeah, and they have really good perimeter defense, like we said, Lemon, and then the guards, Britt and White are very good. And in White, he's 6'6", a true freshman. Wow, 147, true freshman.
He's nuts. We just talked about a team in D1 that's ranked that has like their front court that's like what their power forward is 6'7" or 6'6", 6'6", yeah. And this is a team now at shooting guard that's starting a guy that's 6'6.5" with a 7-foot wingspan.
Wow.
A 7-foot wingspan. And so his natural position is point guard, but obviously when you have that talented of a player, you need to find somewhere to start him. So he threw him at shooting guard. But a 147, 14 potential true freshman. That's nuts. He's already +9 on the season.
Oh, wow. Well, 14 true freshmen getting 31 minutes of playing time. Yeah.
17.8 points per game on his first 11 collegiate games.
I mean, his over-under, you'd have to think, is like 200 SI at the end of his career, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is one of those guys who, like, by the time he's done, might be challenging for, like, Hall of Fame status and all-time leading scorer for Mississippi kind of thing.
Yeah, right. Totally. Wow. 22 points SI improvement in his freshman year of high school.
He's going to be a monster. Yeah. I mean, that's what you get when you recruit a 14 potential guy,
Yeah. But as far as weaknesses, what do you see anything with Mississippi? Because I would say their strength, actually. Yeah. Laterza is 11, Triplets at 7, Cunningham's at 6.
Ooh.
So yeah, it's I didn't even notice the strongest big man group. Yeah.
That's rough.
It's hard to find in all those double digits around it.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously so talented that you can easily gloss over somebody who's a 6 in strength.
Right. And then the rebounding also isn't super great either. 8 for Cunningham, 9 for Laterza, 10 for Triplet. So, they're big, 6'9", 6'10", 6'11", but the rebounding maybe not as good as those heights would indicate. And so
Yeah.
there's the question of like, does sheer size just make up for that weakness, or
Right.
what's the breaking point? What's going to give?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Another team that we kind of glossed over last time, that being Florida State. They are the number one ranked team, not in RPI, just in ranking. So it's, hard to overlook them per se, but we just glossed over them last time. That was maybe a mistake because they're still undefeated.
Yeah. 11-0.
And yeah, 11-0, and their top four are all 170 SI or above, and they all play. Wow. And it's not like one of those situations where they have, 2 point guards or two shooting guards and one has to come off the bench. All these guys play.
Yeah. This is
Makes
another
them really scary.
situation where the team is deep, right? So
Yeah,
they have
yeah, definitely.
four guys over 30 minutes per game, but then 19 minutes, 18 minutes, 16 minutes, and then 28 minutes. So they have a nice rotation, like, so you mentioned they have really, really talented players, but then they have good players that they can rotate in that take up minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, one of their guys that gets minutes, Jim Bird, he's a redshirt freshman. He's only 111 SI, so it's not like the strongest um, team. He's their worst player by SI who gets minutes at least, but he's a
Yeah.
13 potential, so he could definitely improve a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Florida State. Watch out for them. They look really strong.
I'm
Uh,
sure
I mean,
I'm sure we'll be talking about them more in the future for sure.
right, right.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna take a look at Texas A&M, the Aggies of Fins. Great name, by the way, for a president. Um, the Texas A&M Aggies, their roster, they look pretty strong. They're a super fast team. All their starters have 13 speed or above. But their minutes distribution, it's very clear who their starters are. There's no mystery about it. They have 5 players with 31 minutes per game or over, and then 6 or 7 players who are getting 7 minutes or so per game. And so they play a lot. The starters play a lot, but it's not excessive. We've seen some teams where they play their starters 40 minutes, 38 minutes a game. And, the fatigue is heavy, 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 heavy. It does not appear that way with Texas A&M.
No.
Batista and Ferry look like absolutely trucks on the inside. They're very hard to stop.
Yeah.
And Batista being that 6'8" power forward, Ferry being that 6'10" center. Yeah, tough to beat.
Yeah, and Ferry's got an 18 rating in rebounding, a 16 rating in interior defense, 13 strength, and 14 speed. So, I mean, he's got the rate and 18 in inside shot. I mean, it's pretty safe to say that he's a monster,
Right. And, I'd say out of those top 5, I mean, that's really all you have to look at if you're scouting this team.
Yeah.
The top 5, they have, I'd say, great splits defensively, right? The big men are strong in interior defense. The perimeter guys are strong in perimeter defense.
Yep.
So that makes them, good player builds. I think that lets them play above their TPI and SI, really.
Yeah, that's a team who obviously has an identity, and the president has done a good job of filling that identity with players that he thinks will fit, and it's obviously paying off.
Yeah. That said, there's weaknesses, I'd say. Batista's strength is only an 8,
Yeah.
and you definitely like a little bit better than that from your power forward. Ferry, his stamina is only 6. If someone were to play even faster than Texas State plays, you could, kind of run him off the court, get him tired.
Yep. Definitely.
And his weight, he's only like 215 pounds. So, that's the type of guy who can get pushed around. And yeah, his strength is 13, but, there are bigger and stronger guys out there, definitely.
Those are all fair points. And I mean, it sort of manifests itself in the opponent field goal percentage, right? 51.3 on the season.
Right. Yeah. Right. Good catch.
Yeah, 40 for 76 inside. So that's good for like almost 53%. Um, so,
Yeah. I'd also say Chamberlain, he's a fine small forward, but because 6'3" is okay, but yeah, I personally like a bit bigger. Right.
yeah, and especially when you're at their level and you're going against some of the best players in the game, you want to try and have the size that's going to be commensurate with the guys you're going against.
Right. Right. And then, and Yukufin knows his team better than I know his team, but I'd probably play Sorensen and I'd just probably switch Sorensen and Campbell. Right now, Campbell's playing at shooting guard and Sorensen's the point guard. But just in terms of the fit, I think I'd switch them, based on the point guard skills of Campbell being IQ and passing and handling. He's a bit better than Sorensen in all of those. Well, not IQ, I guess, but it's close.
Well, interesting you bring that up, right? Because if you look at the depth chart, Sorensen starts and then Campbell's the backup point guard. And then at shooting guard, Campbell starts and Sorensen's the backup shooting guard.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that, but
Yeah.
I think that's a lot because they did start out with Campbell at point guard and Sorensen at shooting guard for like a couple games.
Yeah.
But if you check the game logs, there's no like split in the minutes.
A quick note on the Aggies, real quick. I noticed that 9 out of their 10 non-con games were at home.
Oh, really?
So they started the non-con season with Brown, who's a D3 team, got that W, and then they played 9 straight games at home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
again, just to talk about the fact that non-con can be a little bit misleading, possibly. 9 straight games at home is obviously ideal. His home road splits by the end of the season, when you look at the overall record, will be reflecting the fact that he probably has more home games. So we'll see how that plays out.
And now we'll move on to Huntington as the next team we're going to look at. And they're led by two-time all-tourney selection Tyrone Boone. This is one of the best teams in Hardwood history. They've made the Final Four 2 out of the past 3 years, or the past 3 years. Actually, you misread that. Finals 1 of those years, but they've just never quite been able to win it all. Not even their conference tournament. They made they made the finals for 2 straight years in their conference tournament, and then lost in the conference tournament final in the championship. It's just one of those teams that seems like they can't close the book, seal the deal.
Not yet, anyways, right?
Not yet, anyways, right.
And then something to keep in mind is the last 2 years they have a recruiting rank of 4 and 2. Oh, no, my bad. That's overall rank. Recruiting rank of 379 and then 4. So the number 4 overall recruiting rank last year. So obviously that means some good talent is coming in. That might be able to pull that team over the top.
Yeah, last year they recruited a 5-star, 2 4-stars, and a 3-star, which, yeah, really, really good.
That's a ridiculous haul.
Yeah. They're super good defensively. I don't know if it's their strongest team ever, but they definitely have that leadership with Tyrone Boone at 181 SI. So we'll see. We'll see where Bridger can take that team this season.
Yeah, and they have a lot of seniors. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seniors this year. So this if this isn't the class that puts them into the title spot, winning that title, then it might be a few years where they cycle through some talent to get back to that point. But I mean, obviously, with the recruiting class they brought in last year, it won't be too long before they're at the top again. So.
Right. Yeah. So then I'll highlight a sleeper team real quick, and I know them pretty well because I'm in the same conference with them, with one of my teams. This is South Florida, right? They're the number 4 team in RPI. It looks like they've played a ridiculous schedule so far this year. And they've done pretty well. They've come out, looking pretty nice. And they have 4 players at 150 SI. This is a LL4 team, so, it's not like we're talking about 170s, 180s. So maybe we grade them on a different curve a bit, but they might make some noise later on because they have a big man, Kwame McKay, 6'9", 159 SI. 18 interior defense, 14 outside shooting, 17 in strength. He's pretty tough, but he's not ideal. He's only 200 pounds. Like my big man with the team that's going to go against this team, I'm not super scared of Kwame McKay. I mean, he's good. He's going to hurt me, but hopefully I can, put the clamps on him a bit.
Yeah, and so they have a nice backup center, Dejon Ham, right? 6'10 and a half, 260 with a 7-foot wingspan, 33-inch vertical. So, 141 SI, 16 strength, 15 rebounding, 11 interior defense. So, he plays 15 minutes a game currently. So it seems like they're spreading their minutes out a little bit. But, you would obviously like to combine those two players into one in terms of their overall skill set.
Yeah. So you're saying I need to watch out for Ham.
I'm saying you need to watch out for Ham. I'm trying to scout for you actively.
I'm getting the early scouting. Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. South Florida, Mike, the president, Mike, that's his minutes distribution. His starters play 25 minutes and his bench plays 15 minutes. That's how it's been for the past several seasons that I've been in the same conference with him. It doesn't look like that's changing. It's worked for him. Good.
Yeah, their highest minutes per game is McKay at 26.7.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice
but
distribution there.
They're really skilled. Fitch is a good point guard. He torched me in the conference final last year. That was such a heartbreaker. And, Aldrich Coles looks like a really good player. He looks like their next star, really.
Yeah.
So the South Florida, the Bulls, look out for them. All right. In terms of who's a fluke, I mean, you could probably just sort by the wins and then look for the lower ranked teams in terms of RPI. Chaminade, I'm not so keen on them. Gonzaga, not so sure either.
Interestingly,
Mm-hmm.
Butler is 11-0, but sits at a 139.1 TPI.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. And they have a good RPI.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that'll last. Their opponent's winning percentage is pretty low. Their strength of schedule isn't great.
Yeah, so that might be one of those situations where, the 11-0 start doesn't necessarily dictate how well they have of a season. Obviously, they just went bot with Nobody Jones moving on to a Puerto Rican team.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to keep an eye on them. But I didn't realize that their TPA dropped off that much, down to 139.1. Not to say they're not skilled or anything, but the teams that are around them are obviously like 160, high 150s, things like that. So that's a pretty a 10 plus TPI advantage is pretty significant, much less like 15 to 20.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we've talked a lot about D1. Let's move on to D2. These are important teams too, definitely.
We love talking about D2.
We love talking about it, D2, yeah. So in D2, we've got 6 undefeated teams.
Well, we had six after the non-con. It's down to 4 now. Down to 4 after the first conference game.
Resort, Rob.
Am I lying?
Yeah.
I'm lying.
Don't worry.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well,
so 2 undefeated teams aren't in the top 50. That's my fault. I think I made the assumption that they would be in the top 50.
I know, right? Yeah. But yeah, 6 undefeated teams: Michigan Tech, Indianapolis, Arkansas State, Western Carolina, Rutgers University, Camden, and Bowling Green. Do any of them look for real?
Well, I'd say Michigan Tech. Michigan Tech's really, really good. So TPI 138.1, 596 RPI. Obviously they're really talented. If you look at their depth chart, they have really good size. So Slack starts at center, 6'11.5. Morgan's a backup, 7'1.5. They have a freaking absolute stud in Ron Ritter at power forward, which I think we talked about last week when we were talking about some guys that have really good TPI growth. But he's up to 147, so he's already +5 this year. But he's sitting at like almost a double-double, 15.5 and 9.5 boards a game, 2 steals a game, which is really good from your power forward. So, I mean, yeah, he's the real deal. I think this is a team that could go pretty far this year. I wouldn't be surprised. Um, Fujishima at point guard, a 168 SI. He looks like a lockdown defender. So his outside shot is 20. Perimeter defense is 17. Strength is 17 for a point guard. And his speed's 14. I mean, those are all ridiculous. Those are all really good. I think any of us would take that. So he's almost at about 6 assists per game. So I'd say out of those teams, that's, Michigan Tech looks like one that, that might be there when we're talking about teams at the end of the season from D2.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know Fujishima, he has a really good build in terms of where his points are. It's just his stamina isn't great especially for your point guard. You want him in the game if he's that good. But looking at their TPI, 138, it's not as strong as Indianapolis, who's 148, or even Arkansas State, who's close to 141. But with Michigan Tech, I know, like you mentioned, the size is a big difference, right? Those three big men are 6'10" or taller, and pretty heavy too, 260 pounds to 270.
Yep.
So they're trucks, they're huge monsters and down low. And even their small forward is a 6'9", I think, or 6'8".
Yeah, Kruger, he's like 6'8", 6'8.5", something like that.
Right, as a redshirt freshman. So he's interesting too. They've got a lot of size. So, it's always how does the mixture really come out, right?
Right. Yeah. And so two of the teams that are still undefeated that we might think, maybe not actually going to stay near undefeated or maybe even single digit losses. Western Carolina maybe, but Rutgers University Camden and Bowling Green. Now, Bowling Green has a 147.5 TPI. I remember their roster last year being really good.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe they stick around. But like strength of schedule so far for Bowling Green is 0.375. That's obviously really, really weak.
Right.
For Rutgers University Camden, it's 0.393. That's also really weak. I mean, Bowling Green's opponent winning percentage is 0.303. So, they're playing some duds that might have boosted them a little bit early season to get to 11-0. Not to say that they won't be successful this season, but I don't think they'll be competing for 40-0.
Right. Yeah. And you and I are both going to have to scout Arkansas State a lot this year because
Yep.
we're in the same conference. We each have a team in the same conference as them. So, they're tough. I know Burrell, their center is really good inside. And
Leonardo
Batista's a really good point
Batista.
guard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mears, they're solid.
Leonardo Batista is one of those guys that has like all of the point guard relevant skills that you'd want for a true point guard, right?
Mm-hmm.
13 basketball IQ, 14 passing, 14 ball handling, 15 driving, 15 speed, but then inside shots 5, shooting
Right.
range is 5, perimeter defense is 8, finishing 17, so he can get to the rim. He's shooting 49% on the season, so who might have criticized a guy that's shooting 49% of the season, 38% from 3.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. And one guy that I want to talk about too on their team, because I almost recruited him as like kind of a backup option, and I didn't think he'd be this good, is Matthias Canada, because it's a funny name too.
From New Mexico.
From New Mexico, yeah. So yeah, New Mexico kid going to Arkansas. That's interesting. And he's a really weird player, 6'8". So he's got the size to be a power forward, but he's a long range shooter. He's a perimeter defender. He's pretty quick. He can handle the ball. So, he's like this weird combo forward, which
Yeah,
I
I mean,
always found interesting.
it's a guy who and you always love to have size on the wing, right? If you can get a sizey player who can cut it at small forward, you're going to do it, right? You love those guys. And I mean,
Yeah.
anytime you can have a guy that's a 7'1" wingspan out on the perimeter, it's going to create some problems for your opponents, right? Especially if he has like a 13 speed. Now, obviously, he has a 5 stamina, so he might, get run off the floor a little bit, especially teams that play a little bit faster of a pace. But I mean, his length is obviously giving opponents trouble because it's 39.7 opponent field goal percentage on the season, And, you know, he's been in the 30s for opponent field goal percentage his entire career. So, you know, size in that case, size and speed, that's a dangerous combo, especially on the perimeter, you know. So, yeah, somebody to keep eyes on. He's playing 26.8 minutes a game as a backup this season. So,
Yeah, yeah. And so let's move on though a little bit, move on down the list. Let's look at actually your teams because you have a couple strong teams in D2. We don't have to get too much into them if you don't want to give away any secrets. But
so,
SUNY Oswego and Santa Clara both looking pretty good so far.
yeah, so for Santa Clara, you know, we talked about the non-con maybe not being relevant or not being indicative of how good a season could be, and I think that might be the case with Santa Clara. So I was pretty excited about them in terms of like how well they performed in non-con, but turnaround, I got blown out in the first conference game against Louisiana Lafayette. It was a really good team, so you know. Um, we have some issues at center in terms of size and skill at the center position. So we'll see how that turns out. I think the non-con was pretty weak. Our strength of schedule in the season is 0.46. So, you know, I'll have to make some adjustments, scout some things out, and sort of, you know, see what I can do there. In terms of how I perform in conference. But Oswego on the other hand, I think they're ready to be like a powerhouse. So Oswego currently sits at 10-1, and the only loss coming to a ranked team earlier this season, Texas State, who not ranked anymore, but they were ranked at the time, but obviously a really good D1 team. So, I mean, they opened conference with an 81-48 win over Caltech. That's always good. A little bit weak of a non-con again, but plus 292 overall point differential in 11 games. I'll take that.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So obviously hoping for some better tournament success than we had last season. In D3, we were, you know, a one and done. We didn't win a single game in the national tourney. I was heartbroken by that. So
yeah, we had a lot of heartbreak.
Heartbreak.
Another team we're gonna have to scout out again in our conference is MSU Moorhead. They look really good. Hate to admit it, but you know, gotta give props. Gotta give props where it's due, right?
I personally despise MSU Moorhead, and I don't care if the owner knows it because
well,
he smoked me multiple times last season. So I just have to be honest about it. That team is really good. They're really fast and
they press a lot.
They press a lot. And if you don't have a point guard that's like amazing at ball handling skills, you're going to turn the ball over.
Yeah, yeah. Well, their president may not find out because he hasn't logged in since Christmas.
I mean, I'm not sad about that.
Yeah, well, we'll see where they go. I mean, it's really this year for them, right? Or this year and next year because they don't have any recruits. They didn't have any recruits last year coming in. They're not on anyone this year, I don't think.
Well, they got one recruit last year, a 1-star.
Oh, oh, wow.
97 SI,
Congratulations.
9-pot 1-star. So yeah, so this is a team that, you know, could perform really well this year, maybe win some stuff, but then they're going to be a huge drop off.
Right. Well, I guess they're on a bunch of guys this year, but you know, again, that president isn't logging in, so he's not putting on points now. So they probably will lose on those guys.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like he's going for guys where there's no competition. Almost every single guy that he's going after has some tough competition on them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know, maybe he lands a couple guys and we look like idiots. We'll see.
All right, let's move on though. Let's talk about the next team we've got on our list. That would be Baylor.
Tasteful Banana. Great.
Their team is looking pretty good.
8-3 on the season. 0.584 strength of schedule, so a really tough strength of schedule. 0.613 RPI.
Yeah, so Baylor, they're a really deep team. They have 12 guys who've played at least 10 games, and 11 guys average double digits. And in minutes, not points. That'd be insane.
Yeah. Yeah, they only have 2 guys averaging double digits in points, 18.6 and 10.4. So, you know, a lot of guys play a lot of minutes, but they're also distributing the scoring amongst a lot of guys too.
Right, yeah. But yeah, Baylor looking good in V9. we already talked about Biola last week, so we won't highlight them too much this week.
Yep.
So we'll instead talk about Northern Kentucky and President Sparkon. Not much to say here. They're kind of, to be honest, I think they're kind of a bland team. But their president has done a great job recruiting since joining in 2011, and their senior big man Patton, he's a force down low. So that's the main guy you gotta watch out for when scouting out this team. I'd say, not to say that their other guys are nothing. Galley is pretty good. Dunaway, Jones,
So
Peterson is solid.
it's pretty interesting, right? Because they're sitting at 9-2 on the season, with a pretty, 0.547 strength of schedule, 0.613 RPI. Those are good numbers.
Yeah.
But their highest rated
TPI.
player, yeah, exactly. Their highest rated player, Forrest Galley, is a 143 SI shooting guard. And then 133, 130, 129. So that's like more something that you would expect to see if you were in D3 and not D2, I think. It's fair to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe their conference as a whole isn't strong, although we haven't, played very many conference games, so
Yeah.
can't really judge it on that.
They beat Biola. Biola's a really solid squad. They beat Biola in non-con 104-90.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a solid win for them.
Yeah, that might be something that's really carrying their RPI, really.
Yeah. And there's a 22 exactly TPI difference between Biola and Northern Kentucky. Biola's at 146.9, Northern Kentucky's at 124.9. So that's huge upset.
That was in that game, right?
Yeah. So that's a pretty big upset, yeah. But solid performance so far for Northern Kentucky.
Yeah. And so another team we wanted to highlight was Lipscomb. And shout out to RDub for watching our last few episodes. And this is a team I've kept track of them because RDub writes really informative and fun PRs that I like to read. I like to read all the PRs, really.
I love his PRs.
Yeah, they're so good. This is a team that dipped down to D1 despite going like 15-15, like basically playing 500 ball last year. So they barely demoted, which really unfortunate. But it looks like they could be up promoting right away, this season. So they have 3 seniors, Pat Carson, Gonzalo Carrasco, and Tony Naranjo leading the way. I think they're seniors. Maybe Carson's just a junior.
Yeah, Carson's a junior. Can I say about their 2 seniors, though? Gonzalo Carrasco and Tony Naranjo. Those are fantastic names. Those are incredible player names.
Especially for Tennesseans, right?
Yeah, I just want to throw that out there. Like Tony Naranjo, Gonzalo Carrasco. If you get smoked by Gonzalo Carrasco, yeah.
Which is pretty likely because he's like reigning conference player of the year for a conference that's higher than the one that Lipscomb is currently in.
Yeah, all conference power forward and conference player of the year. Yeah, he's really good. He averaged 23.8, 10.4 last season.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's a monster, definitely. But yeah, this team, they're super talented, especially for D2. They are, especially on offense, right? They are insane on offense. They hit nearly 11 threes a game on 41% shooting from 3, which we've talked about guys hitting, like individual players hitting 38% and that being like really good. This whole team is shooting over 40%, which we're talking about one of the best shooting teams that we've looked at, probably in the nation.
Yeah, and Naranjo is at 52% on 4.5 attempts. So
wow.
That's really good. And then Holman's at 45.8% on 5.4 attempts. So those 2 guys alone are hitting almost 5 threes a game. They're taking over 10 shots, 10 threes a game, but hitting about 50% of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that
wow,
you can count on that production. That's really good.
Right. Yeah. They've even upped their 3-point shooting percentage. Now it's at 42%.
Yep. 42.3%. So
sheesh. That said,
I would not want to play the Bisons.
yeah, I wouldn't either. Well, we might in the national tournament if we make it, you know. But that said, we are going to look for weaknesses too, especially if there are rivals. Defensively, maybe not the best.
Yeah, just browsing over their stats, Carrasco is somebody who I highlighted as a great name, but maybe not a great defender. Currently giving up 54% from the field. That's not going to get it done, uh, you know, at all, really. And then Holman giving up 56.3, Lee at 18 minutes game giving up 57.8. As a whole, they're giving up 48.5% to their opponents. That's
pretty high.
That's pretty high, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're going to shoot the lights out, but they might also give up a team, they might let the other team shoot the lights out as well.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why, looking at the strength for the big men, they're pretty solid. The speed on the perimeter guys is okay. The defensive ratings themselves are pretty okay. Pretty good even, especially on the perimeter. So I'm not sure exactly why this team isn't super strong defensively or strong.
Right.
And their coach is like not bad either at defense.
Yeah. They play a lot of man-to-man. In their last game, 77% man-to-man, only 10% zone, 7% pressure. So maybe something to mess around with. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I usually play zone, like 30-ish%.
Yeah.
That's like my default. And I'll definitely change that depending on my matchup. But yeah. I don't know. I just did what the bots do.
I just did what the bots do. Computers know best, right?
Yeah. All right. And then another team we're going to look at is San Francisco, USF.
San Francisco State. Oh, no,
yeah.
Not state.
Not state. Yeah.
Yeah, San Francisco Dons. I lied.
The Dons, yeah.
Sorry, Hoosier.
Yeah, Hoosier, he's one of the more experienced presidents, but he moved from University of Pacific to USF back in 2014, took over this Dons team, and he has them winning just like he had his old team winning before. They've had 3 straight strong years, right?
Yeah, I mean, 34-10, 32-12. Last year was a little bit of a drop off. They went 18-23 overall. It looks like they lost some talent, right? So like they went from a 153 TPI to 141.8. Obviously means he had some graduating seniors, but they also landed the number 43 overall ranked recruiting class. So they lost some talent in terms of seniors, but they also brought a lot of talent in.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, the Dons, they're led by a strong front court in Roger Richards and George Calloway and Wendell Little. Oh, good. I got all those names right. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, you did. I mean, this is a team like we talked about earlier, size, right? So their starting point guard, Meeks, is 6'5". Their smallest players are shooting guard 6'3.5", but then small forward 6'6.5", Little 6'7.5", and then Callaway is 6'10.5". So they got some pretty good size there, especially on the perimeter even.
Yeah. But they're still building, their roster talent-wise isn't as strong as some of these other teams we've looked at.
Right.
They've got a big weakness at shooting guard. You mentioned 6'3.5", Dion Webb. He's a true freshman. He's 12 pot, but he's only 99 SI, so he should be good in a few years, but right now I'm not so sure. And I feel like they have better options on their roster right now, but I think they might be redshirted.
So interestingly, he's already +7 on the season, but the last dev that we had today this morning, he went +5.
Oh wow!
So he went +5 in a single dev. Yeah. So maybe he wants to play him. He wants to play him, get him those minutes, and see how much he can develop in a single season. But I mean, that's a guy, like you said, his perimeter defense is 2.
Yeah.
His stamina is 4.
Yeah, I think I remember recruiting, or not. I never recruited him, but looking at him.
And I was sad.
Wasn't he like a power forward or something?
Yeah, he played all kinds of roles in high school. But I remember recruiting him, and I was gonna, redshirt him, develop him, see what happens with him with Santa Clara because he's really fast. But
right,
San Francisco just had to come steal him away.
That's right. Yeah. So it's interesting to see how Webb is being used.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our D2 wrap up. So now we'll move on to D3.
Personally, my favorite division.
D3 is definitely the most fun, I think. You can
Yeah,
have a lot of fun there.
yeah.
So yeah, we talked. The only team we really talked about last week was Wyoming, and they're still up there in RPI. But they lost. They lost to open conference play this season,
They did, yeah.
which that's rough. That's not looking good for President Wyoming of Wyoming.
They're also sitting at 7-4. Now, granted, they played some really tough games. They played like number 14 San Jose State, but they
Mhm.
also lost to Utah State. And like we said, they lost to Vermont to open conference season. So, you know, it's early. It's early.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and like it's 0.578 strength of schedule. So they played a really tough schedule. So we'll just have to see what plays out with them.
But we talked about them last week, so we won't highlight them too much. Instead, we'll talk about other teams like number one ranked in RPI, Tennessee Tech.
Tennessee
And,
Tech.
President Master of the Game, it looks like he's mastered this game because that team is, they're playing well, I'll say.
Yeah,
But
I mean, go ahead.
I'm wondering who the hell they've played.
Well, okay. So when you look at their schedule, you don't think there's some heavy hitters, but then strength of schedule wise, 0.586.
Hmm.
Sitting at 9-2 on the season, their RPI is 0.645. So they've had to have some really good performances against good teams there, right?
Right, yeah, they've had one of the top strengths of schedules, but they've held opponents to just 66 points per game. That might have
Yeah.
changed since I last took these notes. Yeah, 66 points per game on like 42% shooting and 20 less than 21% from three.
Yeah.
I I don't know what strong team shoots like that.
Uh, yeah, I mean, those are fair points. They did play Stanford, number 18 Stanford, on the road earlier this season.
Oh
They,
wow.
they lost to them 82-75. So
Okay.
maybe that might be buoying their strength of schedule and their RPI a little bit, right? When you play a ranked
Right.
team, a ranked D1 team like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, even then, it was a close loss. It was a 7-point loss. So, they played Stanford tough.
Yeah, yeah, they played Stanford tough, it sounds like, and I guess they just beat up on some other weaker teams and really boosted those stats.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, they're a team with no one with a perimeter defense over 9 and only one player with interior defense over 10.
that's
So
wild.
they've allowed they've allowed these crazy percentages, crazy low percentages, but like why? There's no real reason it seems like.
That's wild. Yeah. I mean, their best players are 137 SI. They have 4 players in the 130s, and then everybody else is 129 or lower.
Hmm.
Definitely not a TPI. Definitely not a roster with talent that you would expect to be so strong.
Right.
But you know, who knows?
Yeah, like I said, he's mastered the game.
Maybe we need to have him on to talk about his strategies so we can master the game as well.
Hey, yeah, that's a good point.
Because
We'll
he's
get
got
in
something going
contact.
on there that we need to find out.
Yeah, yeah. All right, who's the next team we should look at?
Let's talk about the Augsburg, not Aggies, the Augsburg Augies.
Yeah.
Augsburg
What an interesting
Augies.
name.
That's a fantastic name. So their president is C. Dilks, which I don't think we've seen him in the Discord. Hopefully he can jump in the Discord or leave us some comments or stuff. But I mean, he's really building the Augies up, right? So they have a very
Yeah.
good backcourt of both Manning and Green, a pretty good center and Hooks. But I mean, overall they're like a deep team.
Right, yeah. Yeah. They look pretty strong, like you said, that backcourt combo, Manning and Green, pretty solid. But I wonder if Bernie Green, the shooting guard, he shoots too much even. He hasn't shot very well this entire season.
Right. 11.5 attempts per game, 36% from the field. Shooting 7.5 3-pointers a game, but only hitting 29%. That's pretty rough. But
Right,
he
yeah.
still
So
has
he's
a
scoring the
positive
ball.
8. He still has a plus 8 point point plus minus. Sorry, plus minus.
Yeah, so it's weird because his outside shot's 16, his range is 12. Like that outside shot's really good. and the range is okay. So I don't know why he's not shooting well, you know?
Yeah.
But whatever works, like you said, his plus minus is still really good, and it's working.
So, so just looking at the game log to dig into this a little bit, he's had a couple games where it's been really rough performances that might have influenced that. So he went 3 for 14 from three earlier this season, and he had back-to-back games of 3 of 11 and 2 of 10 from three.
Hmm.
But in his last game, the first conference game of the season, he went 5 for 10.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yeah,
so maybe they got a good RPI, so maybe they were playing some tougher teams that were able to lock him down a lot more. And now that he's playing against weaker competition, he can shine through. Maybe.
yeah, possibly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things we want to highlight about Sea Dokes in Augsburg is the constant climb in terms of their performance that
Hmm.
really he's seen, right? So when he took over the team, it was like 126 TPI, and now they're sitting at 142.6. He had back-to-back recruiting classes of ranked 63 and 60. So he's done a pretty good job of getting some talent in there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, and then the next team I want to take a look at was Northeastern State, number 5 ranking in RPI and D3. They look pretty good. President Hooper, they're a very balanced team. They're solid all around, I'd say, especially on defense. And they've got a lot of really good shooters, I'd say. They move the ball around. You can see that in their assist numbers. They score the ball in the paint. I'm going to try to pull up their stats and so I can reference some numbers.
So Wiley has an 8.4 assists per game number.
Right, yeah, yeah. And their team averages 16 assists per game, which is pretty good. And
That's
Wiley,
pretty
yeah, gets
good.
half of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, Wiley's averaging more assists than he is points per game.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever seen that in this game.
The Jason Kidd, I guess. The old Jason Kidd.
Yeah, exactly.
Or old age. I mean,
Yeah, all the age Jason Kidd.
yeah.
Um, but you talk about good size. Wiley 6'5", Miller 6'4", Bell at small forward 6'5". Their power forward's a little bit undersized at 6'6", and their centers at 6'8", a little bit undersized. Um,
Right, right.
so those are some interesting things there.
Yeah, yeah. They move the ball around. Like we said, they score the ball in the paint, though. 37 points in the paint per game. But they also shoot really well, 38% from three. Not too
Yeah.
many attempts from three. Like we said, they work the ball inside. It seems a lot more. But yeah, my question though is they have a player hitting 2 threes a game, Jimmy Bell. He's got a 4 in shooting range. And he's hitting 1.8 threes now per game on 43% shooting. So we talked about, Bernie Green, he's got good ratings, but shooting poorly. Now here's a guy with not great ratings, but he's shooting incredible.
I mean, and he's taken 46 shots on the season. That's not like a super small sample size.
Right.
That's pretty surprising. Yeah, shooting range of 4.
Yeah. So it's weird. I mean, he's a good player. He was, freshman of the year in the conference last season. He's 6'5". He's a solid player. I just don't understand how he's hitting so many threes. He's shooting so well.
One would also think that if a player is sitting at a shooting range of 4, you would probably want to focus them inside and not have them taking over 4 threes a game.
Hmm.
But I guess if they're hitting, then you don't change anything.
Yeah. Well, we'll see because last year he hit less than 30% of his threes on 5 threes a game. So maybe it's just a fluke, although it was 10 games of a fluke. That's I don't know. That's interesting.
So
It'll probably normalize.
he had one game, the very first non-conference game against Payne, where he went 7 for 9 from 3. And then he had another game where he went 4 for 7. But maybe some big performances are like inflating that 3-point percentage relative to what he might finish at on the end of the season. But I mean,
Right.
again, a guy with shooting range 4, you don't expect a 7 for 9 from 3.
Right.
I don't care
Yeah.
what his green light is.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, 10 games is still not a huge sample size.
Yeah.
So, a couple big games can definitely uh, change the the numbers a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, overall, this team hasn't played the strongest of non-con schedules, so maybe the stats are a little inflated. So we'll see how they measure up though
Yeah. We'll track them
in
throughout the season.
conference.
Yeah.
All
So
right, and then we've got another team.
yeah, the last team we want to talk about in D3, South Alabama, President Palkify. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. So they're currently in VI8. Right now they're sitting at 10-1 on the season, number 10 in the D3 rankings, a 585 RPI on a 471 strength of schedule. So, 471 strength of schedule is not exactly super strong, but nonetheless. So a team rating of 53.89. Basically, we like to see teams that are getting better that historically haven't really accomplished a lot, right? At least that's what I like to see. We both like building projects in this game, so this is why I kind of wanted to highlight them. Um, so if we take a look at their history, Paul Kafai is going into his sixth season as president. It looks like the situation is pretty dire when he took over. Their TPI was 106.9, which is like incredibly low. They had seasons where they went 3-38, 5-36, and 4-37. But then in the 2015 season, he landed the 67th ranked recruiting class. And you can tell that's kind of paid off because the team is now on the way up. They won their conference tourney last season, which I think was probably a bit of surprise and an upset considering what their TPI was last season. What was it? I think they finished at 137.7 TPI, but they went 13-17 in conference for a 12th place finish. So it's not often that you expect a 12th place finishing team to win your conference tourney. And
Right, yeah.
then made the national tournament as a 16 seed, lost, which, not all that surprising, but still a pretty good accomplishment to make it there in general. But yeah, I mean, just one of those teams from D3 that we like to highlight that, is not a historically strong team, but a president is really doing a good job of building them on the way up.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, good to see that upward trajectory for Palkify, South Alabama, looking pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that wraps up D3, I'd say. And now we got some quick hitters on the news. Some 5 stars committed recently. Caden Skinner to Jacksonville State, Justin Ratliff to West Virginia, Bobby Shelby to his hometown Evansville, and Chuck Hung to UTEP.
Yep. So some big guys committing there, some dominoes starting to fall. You'll see some of the big teams sort of shifting their focus after those dominoes fall like that. Big
Right,
win for
yeah.
Jacksonville State though. Caden Skinner looks really good.
Yeah, Caden Skinner looks really good. I haven't looked too much into the other guys because they're not really regions I recruit too much.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Ratliff or Shelby or Hung?
I also haven't looked too much into them because I get sad that I'm not the team that signed them. But I think I've looked at Chuck Hung. So, I sort of filter sometimes when I'm recruiting by potential, just to keep an eye on the guys that are really high potential. We've had some 14 and 15s generate lately. Chuck Hung, a 104 SI, 14 potential 5-star. So obviously a really talented player, has a good eval, has some pretty decent growth in high school, 48 to 66, 66 to 85, 85 to 98. But I mean, anytime you can get a 5-star with a 14 potential, you're going to take it, even if his SI seems like it's a little bit low. So it'll be interesting to see how that potential plays out, how he develops. But
Right, yeah.
it looks like he's already +6 on his senior season. So
Yeah, and I'd say Bobby Shelby, the kid who went to Evansville, he looks like a solid shooting guard, I'd say. You know, good shooter, above average shooter, smart player, very quick, really good ball handler. It looks like he should work out. I'm a little worried about his height, although I think he gets to 6'1", and weight doesn't particularly matter for shooting guards so much.
yeah,
But it looks like he has the points in the right spots, so that's nice to see.
he's also
For that team.
playing a lot of minutes in his senior year at point guard. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, he's at 24.9 minutes at point guard. actually a few minutes at center. So that's interesting.
Love to
But
see that.
yeah, I know, I love to see that, right? But that might be a situation where at the end of a senior season, you're like, maybe I should push him towards being a point guard. We'll have to see how that plays
Hmm.
out.
Yeah, and Ratliff, he looks pretty solid as a point guard too. Very quick, excellent all-around player, skilled passer, decent ball handler, excellent shooter. You know, pretty solid there. I'd say I like Shelby particularly because of the SI growth rate historically that he's had,
Yeah,
from 60 to 107 in 3 years, versus like Ratliff has started his freshman years in 91 and is at 126. He hasn't even improved at all yet this season, his senior season.
right.
So that's a bit more worrisome, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to move on
But
to
you know, still
the
good.
do you want to move on to the puzzling coaching decision of the week?
Yeah, let's move on to the puzzling coaching decision of the week.
One of our
And
favorite
this is
segments.
this is yeah, we need a drop, you know, a noise for it. I
Soundboard, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I know this puzzling coaching decision of the week well because I luckily benefited from it. I noticed it, I forget, Friday morning, Saturday morning. Uh, Scranton, Scrantonicity, P- Scranton, PA, Alan Russell. I mean, you're an active president. We like that. Scranton Royals, you know, but you dropped a really good coach for a coach who's older than the guy you dropped. No, he's younger by 1 year. Sorry. You dropped him for a coach who's like not bad. You dropped him for Sam Meek. Sam Meek seems to understand defense, has a good rapport with prospects and recruits. Perfectly fine, 34-year-old. But you dropped a guy, Tom Grimes, who understands offense and can develop players and has a good rapport with recruits. So you lost a better developer.
I believe he has 11 rating already in all three of those categories, right?
Yes, he does. Yeah, an offense, player dev, and recruiting. Yep.
And so one of the things that's interesting is one of their assistant coaches, Teddy Haskins, a 28-year-old. Out of the 6 categories, 5 of them are 9 ratings. So
And you didn't fire that guy?
if there's a coach you're gonna fire, it's presumably going to be that guy over the guy who has positive comments and positive development, right? Like one would assume. So
Yeah,
maybe you
right.
let go of the wrong guy in the process of hiring a new assistant.
Yeah, I mean that happened to me on one of my teams. I I accidentally had the wrong guy clicked.
Yeah, which happens. I mean,
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I wonder if he just purely went with age. And again, Sam Meek seems like a pretty good coach, but yeah, Haskins probably was the guy to drop here,
yeah, yep.
at
Puzzling
least for
coaching
me.
decision
You
of the
know,
week
I
for
mean we're
sure.
we're puzzled. I'm puzzled, right?
If you hear this and you have a reason for your coaching move, please let us know.
Yeah, Alan Russell. But
I
hey,
want to know.
I'm puzzled, but I'm also happy because I picked up Tom Grimes.
It was a nice pickup for you. That might be the best assistant coach I've seen so far. With having 3 categories at 11 already, and then
Hmm.
3 positive comments. I haven't seen that yet. I've seen 2 all the time, but not 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was that was pretty nice.
Right. All right. So now we're going to go on to another segment that we are trying to make a regular thing. We're going to talk about the bot teams of the week,
Bot
and
teams
we're
of the
just
week.
we're just going to pick a couple. So you know, I went with a different approach this week. And I'm picking a team that is probably more competitive than, you know, last week I picked Hodden, and Hodden was a complete project that needs to be completely redone. But I'm going with a more of a competitive team, and I'm going to talk about Appalachian State today. And you know, Appalachian State, they've got 30 prestige, which is a good place to start with. Prestige helps with recruiting. They're in North Carolina, and North Carolina is a pretty good place to recruit, especially because it's in the same region as Florida and Georgia, and North Carolina itself is pretty solid. Appalachian State has 2 sophomore bigs who are like not terrible in Keith Pearson and Henley. I forget his first name. And they've got a couple of different pieces that a new owner can use to either try to win now, like Howard Griffin and Mann, or you can develop for the future, like Keandre Williams, Patterson, Zerwinski, or Segura as the point guard, and then Seward. I kind of like. Again, they're not perfect pieces, but I think they can work. And so, that's the nice thing about taking over a team. You can go different ways with it. They need better coaches for sure. They have really bad coaches.
Yeah.
But they're about to rise up. I feel like they've already hit rock bottom, and now they're on the upswing, I think. So that's my bot team of the week, Appalachian State. You've heard of them upsetting Michigan football that one year. Now you can be that by taking them to the top and upsetting Florida State and all these teams we talked about above.
So just a quick follow-up on Houghton, your bot team of the week from last season, or from last week.
No, they're so bad.
They're
They're
1-10 to start the season, and they opened
Yeah.
conference play by losing to Arkansas Tech, the Wonder Boys, 89-33.
Hey, yikes.
89-33.
That is not good.
That is anything but good.
But you see why they need a president to help them take over and put them on the right path?
I'm advertising how you can take a team from the bottom all the way to the top. That's all.
Yeah, and that team is truly on the bottom.
I mean, 21% from the field, not a single player that got into double digits. If you wanted a total project, Houghton might be your total project.
That sounded so painful. All right, Rob, who's your bot team of the week?
So my bot team of the week is the Fairlane Dickinson Florham Devils from Florham Park, New Jersey. So they have a TPI of 117.2, which is pretty low. Not a very good team talent-wise per se, but they're off to a 9-2 start with a 591 RPI and a 487 SOS. So good, decent strength of schedule. Their first game in conference, they beat the University of New England 96-38. 96-38. And what's a unique point about that is they had a 48-19. They won each half 48-19. So the first half at halftime it's 48-19. The second half the score is 48-19. That's how you get to 96-38. So that's like, I don't know, just unique, and I thought was pretty fun. In terms of their roster, they have some decent young talent, couple like a redshirt freshman, a redshirt sophomore, some sophomores and freshmen, but nothing too great to boast about. Obviously, their best players are 135 SI. I said their TPI is pretty low, so they're not exactly like the strongest team to take over, but that that's the advertisement for why you'd want to take over this bot team of the week. And they're underachieving they're overachieving, I should say, with the talent they have, sitting at 9-2.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I remember I saw them, in the top 10, I believe, in RPI for D3. So yeah, it looks like they're overperforming. They're overachieving right now. So someone needs to take advantage of that and take that team and continue them on that direction, right?
Ride this team for this season. They are 6th right now in RPI with a 117 TPI. For reference, Wyoming is 2 spots higher than them with a 153.4 TPI.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when they match up.
That's wild. Yeah. So our midweek episode that we're going to do this week, we're going to have a really special guest, somebody that I think we'd both consider one of the best presidents in the game, at least one of the most experienced. And we're going to ask a lot of questions related to the game, sort of how they found their team and whatnot, and if they have any advice for new presidents or presidents that are just getting going, like us even. Somebody who's navigated the game for so long, I'm sure they have invaluable expertise that we could all stand to benefit from.
Yeah, it's one of the best teams in the universe, in the Hardwood universe. And I'm really excited. I know Rob is really excited. I hope you all are really excited for this interview because it's going to be really good.
Yeah, and I mean, interviews for midweek episodes are something we want to try and do as the season goes on. So if you're interested in jumping on a Zoom with us, talking about your program, your team, Hardwood at all, your expertise, that kind of thing, reach out to us, and we can set something up with you.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.